So, welcome back, and now we will continue with the next part. And I did mention just now there are two essential fatty acids that the body cannot make. And this essential fatty acids are both polyunsaturated fatty acids, which is your linoleic, your omega-6, as well as your omega-3 fatty acid. And basically, these double bonds that appear after the six carbon in the chain. So the major omega-6 fatty acid in our diet is linoleic acid. And omega-3 fatty acids basically is your alpha linoleic acid. And they are usually found in your food and are present at the third double bond, from the third carbon in the chain. So there has been set, adequate intakes have been set for both this omega alpha linoleic and also your linoleic acid. And when the essential fatty acids are consumed, this our body can actually make them use them to make other non-essential fatty acids. And so we have to consume them because our body cannot make them, we have to consume them as part of our diets because we do not have the enzymes to actually make your omega-3 and omega-6. So what are some foods that may contain your omega-6 fatty acids? Okay. And it's usually found in vegetable oil, such as your soybean, corn, and safflower oil, your cottonseed oil. And most Americans get plenty of your linoleic acid from food containing your vegetable oils, such as also your margarine and salad dressing, and also the mayonnaise. Also, also whole grains and vegetables do supply some linoleic acid, and also animal feed, when we look at the American diet, basically you see just large amounts of linoleic acids, typically of the types of oils that is being heavily used in food manufacturing. Also, when we talk about, the type of feed that we're kind of using for your beef, your chickens, in this industrial farming complex as well, again, using a lot of corn and a lot of soybean, and basically that's where we find a lot of our omega-6 fatty acids as well. In terms of our omega-3, we can find them in various kinds of oils. For example, your flaxseed, soybean, and walnut oils. And also, they are really good source, especially when you talk about, ground flax seeds, your soy-based products. And when we talk about omega-3 fatty acids, they're usually found in relatively small amounts in foods, like your green leafy vegetables. For example, your kale, Swiss chard, spinach, dark green lettuce, or your broccoli. And you can see a picture of whole flax seeds on the, basically, and uh, basically, these flax seeds, whether whole or ground up, it's very, very, it's sometimes found in some brands of bread, or you can even add flax seeds into your smoothies or into your favorite muffins or pancake recipes. So why, do we need this linoleic and alpha linoleic acids? Basically, they are a vital part of our cell membranes, and they also play a role in the proper functioning of the immune systems. Also, they are vital for the growth and development of infant children, particularly in terms of cognitive development. So the body basically can convert, and we saw that in the other slide where you have your omega-3 and your omega-6 fatty acids. And for your omega-3 fatty acids, basically, the body can convert some of this to two additional omega-3 fatty acids, which are essential for heart, make sure your heart is healthy. And that is your docosahexaenoic acid and your eicosapentaenoic acid. And because the conversion of your alpha linoleic acid into your DHA and EPA is very, very slow, we need to get your DHA and EPA from your diets. And basically, they are found a lot in your types of fishes, such as your sardines, mackerels, cod, tuna. You can also find them in your lean fish, okay, but they contain a much more smaller amounts. And DHA and EPA, again, just to kind of remind you, it's not found in any plant-based food. So why is this DHA and EPA really important? And they play a very, very vital role in the brain and eye development during pregnancy and infancy, as well as they are excellent for keeping your heart healthy because they help to reduce blood pressure. It helps to reduce your heart rate. It prevents blood clots, which are kind of associated with heart attacks, and it helps to lower your blood triglyceride levels. So when we talk about, omega-6, Americans generally get plenty of that linoleic acid, and that is not the case with alpha linoleic acid, basically your DHA and EPA. So the ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 fatty acids in the diet is very, very important to kind of regulate your blood pressure, blood clotting, and inflammation. So having a healthy ratio of omega-3 to omega-6 kind of helps to lower that and reduce inflammation and blood pressure. And inflammation basically is that body's response to injury, and basically any long-term inflammation can play a key role in chronic diseases of like your heart disease. So we need to increase our intake of omega-3 fatty acids, okay, and find good sources of that, especially for your DHA and EPA. And so one of the recommendations, especially by the American Heart Associations, is to eat about 225 grams per week of a variety of seafoods to get your DHA and EPA to kind of reduce that risk of heart disease. Um, and um, and we have to, uh, we need to get at least 250 milligrams to kind of prevent heart disease or, deaths from heart disease itself. But the thing about consuming fish is to kind of remember that, nearly all fish and shellfish, they do contains traces of mercury. And some of this, we had some of these fish and shellfish, they may contain really high levels that may harm an unborn child or, a pregnant woman. And so it's very important to kind of avoid certain types of fish. And the risk from mercury in fish and shellfish kind of depends on the amount of fish and shellfish that is eaten and the levels of mercury in that fish. And so therefore the, Food and Drug Administration and the Environmental Protection Agencies advise pregnant women, nursing mothers to kind of avoid certain types of fishes. Um, and to avoid and to kind of eat fish and shellfish that are lower in mercury. So, so for example, do not eat shark, swordfish, king mackerel, or tailfish. Also kind of checking on local advisories and eating up to about 340 grams of a variety of fish and shellfish that are low in mercury. For example, your pollock, catfish, your tuna, or also your salmon. And we also, it's not advised, if no advice is available, kind of eat 6 ounces of fish from local waters, but don't eat any fish that week. So basically you can see, because it's, mercury poisoning that it's kind of been released into the water. So, you see these fishes, the bigger fish kind of eating the smaller fish, and the mercury content just keeps accumulating in that fish. So, it's always kind of advisable to kind of check local advisories and kind of avoid certain types of fishes, particularly if you're pregnant or you are nursing a young child, or, a young, or if you are if you have young kids. So the next thing that we're going to look at is that ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 that I was talking about. And we kind of looked at, the traditional diets, and we are getting a lot less omega-3 in our diets, um, a lot more omega-6 in the current US diets. So it's very, very significantly imbalanced because we have the higher omega-6 to omega-3, about 50 to 20 times more. But when we look at, the Mediterranean diets, and we see, and in the, Japanese diets, which is particularly very fish and plant-based heavy, we see that there is actually a higher amount of omega-3 sources, okay, 4-1, 2-1, or even 1-1. And research have kind of shown that balanced omega-6 to omega-3, particularly in that ratio, which is in the current Japanese diet of about 4-1, is linked to better health and lower risk of diseases like heart disease and certain types of cancers. And when we talk about the typical American diet, you see that's almost 4 times more, and those are associated with an increased disease risk. So basically, we want to aim for a more balanced omega-6 to omega-3, anywhere from about 4-1 or 6-1, and that could really offer significant health benefits. So kind of like incorporating more omega uh, foods in your diet, such as your plant-based foods like your flax seeds, your walnuts, leafy greens, grass-fed animal products like, your eggs and fish to have that balanced EPA and DHA. And so here's another thing, to look at the various types of fats in your various types of food. So of course, not all foods and oils and fats are kind of shown in this graph, and you do not need to memorize this in detail. But there are a few things from the slides. First, all foods, as you can see here, they contain varying amounts of your different types of fatty acids. For example, your saturated, monounsaturated omega-3 and also your omega-6 fatty acids. And it's the proportion to each other that really matters. So for example, if we take your beef fat or your butter fat, your animal fat, we can basically see that they are higher in your saturated fatty acids, right? 52, 66, lard as well. And the pink bars are saturated fatty acid content. And there are two plant exceptions which in that saturated fatty acid that is found in animal food. And like I mentioned just now, it was your coconut and palm kernel oil. Okay. Notice when you go above that palm kernel oil, basically the monounsaturated fatty acid kind of drops off. Um, and when we look at the purple bar, that's basically your monounsaturated fatty acids. And basically, when we look over here, the there is a mistake in this graph where peanut oil has about 49% of your monounsaturated fatty acid, and this is the predominant type of fat in peanut oil. The number for peanut oil is correct, but the bar, if you look at the bar size, is kind of like the bar size is kind of drawn incorrectly. Let me just, yeah, the bar size over here is drawn incorrectly. All right, for your peanut oil, but it's actually 49% of your monounsaturated fatty acid. Now, also, I want to kind of let you draw your attention to the yellow bars, okay? That is your omega-6 fatty acid. And you will see that, you have your seed oils, your safflower oils, okay, your safflower oils, your sunflower oils, your corn, and your olive oils. And then we also have that light aqua blue oil, light aqua blue bar, and that's your omega-3. And so you notice when it comes to omega-3, there are not a lot of foods that actually contain your omega-3 fatty acids. And that's one of the problems that we'll see later. Canola oil, olive oil, soybean oil, basically they contain a bit of your omega-3 polyunsaturated fatty acids. But if this graph included the fatty acid profiles of some fish and maybe your flax seeds and walnuts, you might see a little bit more of that omega-3 fatty acids that might be present. Okay, so now we will actually go into phospholipids, and you do not need to memorize the structure again, but basically do remember that phospholipids are one of a major category of lipids, and they make up of cell membranes in our cells. And so when we eat cell membranes, we eat food. And note that phospholipids actually do contain two fatty acids. And the phrase that we are what we eat, right? We are what we eat basically is really true for phospholipids in your cell membranes, because our cell membranes mirrors what we have been eating in like recent months. So basically a phospholipid has like glycerol, two fatty acids, and a phospholipid, containing compound, as you can see in the structure here. And our cells and our certain tissues in our body must have significant amounts of these certain types of fatty acids in their cell membranes. And so it's a main component of our cell membrane, and it's synthesized as needed. And especially in our brains and our nerve cells, we do have a lot of that omega-3 DHA fatty acids in their phospholipids that kind of make up that cell membrane. So we say that omega-3 DHA has a very, very high concentration in our brain tissue. And apart from that as well, it's a component, it corrals cell content. It helps to regulate movement in and out of our cells. It also acts as a form of emulsifiers. And because phospholipids cannot participate in our fat digestion and absorption and transport. And so in the body is able to produce phospholipid when it needs it, and lecithin is actually a component of your phospholipid. And so, especially when we talk about, the role of phospholipids, um, we kind of need them because we know that fat and water do not mix. So it forms that emulsifier as like a shell around those fat droplets and helps suspend them in our watery solution. So it aids with digestion and transportation. Particularly those two things are your bile and lecithin. And now we move on to cholesterol. And so cholesterol basically is only found in animal foods, okay? It does not exist in plant-based food. It's absolutely essential for life, but you do not want excess of it, okay? And we need it to make bile acids, various kinds of hormones, and vitamin D. Basically, where we can find cholesterol, a lot of it is in our egg yolks, poultry, meat, okay? They provide most of the kind of cholesterol that we need. Milk products basically lower in and it is particularly lower in lower fat products, okay? You can also find cholesterol in fish, okay? With shellfish, particularly a shrimp being higher in cholesterol than other fishes. And here are some other points that you need to know about cholesterol. You know, it our bodies, most of us know that our diets contain cholesterol if we eat animal foods. But what we also don't realize is that our livers can make animal food. Our livers can also make cholesterol. All the cholesterol that we need. And so if you're a strict vegetarian who eats no animal food, for example, and you at all, and so you have that really healthy blood levels of cholesterol because our bodies can actually make all the cholesterol that we need. And so this is one reason why we are better off eating less animal foods and more plant-based food, because a classic pattern of a typical westernized diet is just really heavy on animal food. Also to kind of draw your attention is, what are the recommended intakes for dietary cholesterol? Is to limit it to less than 300 milligrams, okay? Or about 4 ounces of meat and poultry or fish containing about 100 milligrams of cholesterol. So one egg, okay, and basically the cholesterol is found in your egg yolk contains about 186 milligrams. So if you're consuming egg, then it's okay on average to consume one egg a day, because our daily limit is about 300 milligrams. And we want to kind of also kind of reduce the amount of animal foods that we eat to make sure that we're below that level. And just to kind of also, let's put out there is that, cholesterol can build up in your arteries and it's a risk factor for heart disease. And also men usually tend to take in a lot more cholesterol because, you talk about muscle building, you tend to eat a lot more steak, a lot of protein-based food, which tend to have higher amounts of fat. Again, when we look at, the your dietary recommendations, again, we want to, when in terms of saturated fat, it's kind of we are asked to limit and consume less than 10% of our calories from saturated fat, kind of replace that with mono and polyunsaturated fat. And for those who have a risk of heart disease, you want to reduce that even further to about 5 to 6%. And you know we want to again consume less than 300 milligrams of cholesterol per day. And usually, again, like I mentioned, cholesterol can be made from our bodies, so we do not need to get a lot of it from our diets. Trans fatty acid as low as possible, and as it's kind of been mandated that all food manufacturers have to have 0% of trans fatty acid in your food. It used to be a problem, in the 90s, early 2000s, but these days with better food labeling, you see that almost all food products have to have no trans fatty acid present here in America, and kind of replace foods that are high with saturated fats with lower choices of solid fats, and use oil to replace solid fats whenever possible. Apart from that, we also kind of can look at your essential fatty acids, what is the recommended intake, and we can see your omega-6 to your omega-3 fatty acids. And basically, if a human fails to consume enough omega-6 or omega-3 fatty acids, you might see deficiencies that might appear. And usually the first signs of it is that epithelial tissues, skin becomes flaky and itchy. You can experience diarrhea. Your hair might fall out or lose its pigment. And you might also kind of like more vulnerable to infections. And to meet our dietary requirements for essential fatty acids, basically, we only need to consume about 2 to 4 tablespoons of plant oil per day, which equates to about 5% of our total calories. And so we can easily get that from our cooking oil, salad dressings, nuts and seeds, vegetables, and whole grains. So if we kind of look at, the ratios of your the food and nutritional board recommendation for essential fatty acids, we can see that, our omega-6 fatty acids, 17 to 1.6, or even 12 to 1.1. And except in cases where we talk about GI tracts diseases or eating disorders, okay, essential fatty acids deficiencies are generally quite rare in the developed world. So with that, I will actually end here.